Recording. All right, everyone. This is your boy Fernie here back now with another new interview video. This time, though, I'm using the StreamYard website. One of my first times using it. It was introduced by my new friend here that you see on the screen. I'll introduce her in a moment as well. But yes, this is a new interview under the Ghost and Spirits banner. The reason for this was because I was a couple of weeks back there in Mineola, Texas for the East Texas Paranormal Con. Some of you have seen my videos already about that convention in the past, some of those past years that I've been, and I was there this year as well. I'm still gathering a lot of the stuff from videos and from photos and other evidence that I'll present later on here. But one of the best treats that I had there was the privilege of attending a conference that was being held by our guest here. Her name is Ashley Storm. It was a wonderful conference, a wonderful panel. I shall post it on my YouTube channel here later on as well. But it gave us an opportunity to meet with Ashley there, and she agreed to do very nicely an interview with us for us here for my channel. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce everyone here to Ashley. Hi, Ashley. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you again, Ashley, for coming by and graciously enough doing this interview for my channel. I guess the first question I have is if you wanted to introduce yourself to our audience, let us know who you are, and then I'll be able to, I guess, ask some further questions on it afterward. But thank you again. Much appreciated.
Of course, thank you very much for having me. My name is Ashley Storm, obviously. I can be found everywhere doing a little bit of everything. I do a lot of events around Texas and Louisiana, mostly paranormal conferences, Comic Cons, and Tyler Celtic Fest. We do the haunted house every year out in Tyler and in Mineola, and I do some local independent films around the East Texas area too. I MC a lot of the events that we hold, and I just like doing weird and spooky things, and I've been doing it for a very long time. I also do psychic galleries, tarot cards, and all different types of
Wonderful, wonderful. How long have you
like
been
that.
doing the Tyler Paranormal Con? I think it was called Tyler Paranormal before, and now it's East Texas Con, correct? Something like
Yes,
that.
it is the East Texas Paranormal Conference now, and when I first started doing it, it was the Tyler Paranormal Conference, and that was held in downtown Tyler, usually. But
Mm.
I've been doing that since about 2020, 2021. It's been about 5 or 6 years now, I do believe.
Wow.
I used to also own the Broken Bow Asylum, and I've been on Death Walker with Nick Groff. They filmed there at my location, and yeah, I've done literally like a little bit of everything in this field, but I have been having paranormal experiences my entire life. So I've really been in it for 30 years plus.
Wow. In fact, that leads to my first question. I guess where did this all start? What was your very first experience when it comes to the paranormal? There's always that beginning thing, that beginning instance that causes someone to like almost change their life in that direction. So it's interesting to hear what yours might have been.
So I grew up in a culture where basically being a part of like supernatural instances was just kind of the norm. We believed in spirits who were guardians of our island. We believed in things called duendes, which are like jungle dwelling creatures that steal children. Um, I grew up on what people who don't grow up believing that stuff would call superstitious, but to us, it's just kind of the way of life. Uh, and I saw, I've seen ghosts, what you would classify as ghosts for as long as I can remember. But one particular time was when we were all sitting inside of my aunt's kitchen, and it's kind of just like tin huts in Guam. That's we live in tin huts because there are typhoons all the time, and it's easier to rebuild. But they're open doorways. There's not really like a door. There's a opening in the front of the house and opening in the back of the house, and the kitchen and the living room are all kind of just a free flow in the middle. And I saw someone in an older, mestiza looking dress walking through the um, kitchen, living room area, and it didn't seem to bother anybody else that she was walking through there. But we didn't know this lady, so I was like, "Who is that?" And my aunt, and I very vividly remember her looking at me and saying, "You can acknowledge them or you can't. You choose." And then she
Oh
never
wow.
said anything else. It was just kind of like a you deal with it or you don't, but it is what it is. And we'd always grown up hearing stories, and I've seen like things firsthand happen to people when they touch like the bonellas trees or they do things that are disrespectful to the island that get you haunted by katamonas. So I very much believe that it was a normal thing. And then I moved stateside to New Orleans, right outside of New Orleans in St. Bernard Parish, and kind of quickly realized that it's not so normal. It's just normal for my culture. So I kind of stopped all of it. And then I had an ex who passed away when I was 27 years old. And he came to me and he was like, use your gift. And
Really?
ever since then, I've just been helping people. I don't charge for anything I do. Everything that I make when I do documentary series or filming or events for any places, it always goes back to that place or usually veterans, homeless shelters, um, mental health crisis lines, different things like that. I don't make any money off of what I do. I just use it to help people.
Wonderful. And how old were you on your very first encounter that you had again?
Five, like the first one that somebody like else acknowledged. Five. I had just started kindergarten.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
young. Okay. That was something too. When you mentioned that you were helping people, I saw that firsthand there on the at the panel at the convention. It was interesting. You had that wonderful set of moments where you were going one by one with personnel, with the people there, and then just asking them, tell me about something like what was something that stands out. That was the first time I've ever seen something like that really happen at a convention. So I was hoping if you could also talk about that too. I guess just about your panels and what you mentioned within them, because it's really interesting to see how it opens up people to talk about their own experiences and the way you help them through it too.
Yeah, I'm getting a little teary eyed because that really does mean a lot. Usually, so like the conferences, and this is not to knock anybody who does it their own way. I operate differently. It is amazing because I love watching people that we have and just the amount of information that comes together at these things. But I don't think that the way we all get the most out of that experience is just to hear one person in that room speaking about their experiences. Um, when we can see all of the different things that we may perceive as coincidences before we hear, you know, even just one other person or two other people experiencing the same thing, it's comfort. It turns into comfort instead of coincidence. It becomes a familiar place, a safe place. And, when you said it changes people, I've seen people come in and their energies just be like so dark and angry and just kind of bitter or angry and scared, angry because they're scared. And then we get to share all of these things, and then them hearing that they're not alone in it, it changes them as a person. It truly does. It changes their color, it changes their perception, and the way that they move forward from that point on. And I usually go into it with a subject in mind, but I read the room, and it's kind of like what does everyone here want to talk about most? Because my topic will usually spark a particular line of interest, and then we'll go from there and then build on top
Yeah. And do you remember too? There was several people. First, there was a gentleman there, and then one other lady, if I recall correctly, where they first didn't want to really talk about something, like they were saying, pass, something like that.
of that. Yes.
But
Uh
then,
huh.
interestingly enough, they opened up after they saw what it was doing to everyone else there. And so it was great to go back to them and then hear their experiences too. Some of them pretty deep
Yes.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were very, very hesitant about that. And, that's why I always give everyone the option. I don't ever want you to feel pressured into doing it. But they voluntarily, I didn't like go back around the room. I think we still had a few more people left. But that story that was told right before they volunteered, I think really sparked something in them. And they were like, okay, well, maybe it won't sound as crazy. Because I know we all think we're going to sound crazy, right? Like, oh, I was sitting alone in a 200-year-old brothel and I got kicked in the back by a ghost. I sound insane. But you hear enough people having instances where it does affect you in the physical realm and you don't feel crazy anymore. You don't feel as scared. You feel like, okay, there's a way we can, like, the control. It's a loss of control when you're dealing with the supernatural. How do you thwart
Absolutely.
something you can't see? No matter how many crystals and protection spells or sprays you have on you, if something truly, truly, I don't care what anyone says, if someone truly wants to harm you, they can find a way to do it. If an energy wants to hurt you, there's ways to lessen it and to cleanse yourself of it, but to completely prevent it, I think, is
I'm gonna touch
I
on
think
that
that's
too a little bit
possible.
later on. Um, if for advice out there, if anyone has any spirits that are a little bit more on the badder side, how to deal with them. But I guess that's just for a little bit later. I did have though one question on the room that we were in and the people that were there. I forgot to ask you while you were there at the location. Um, do you have like almost, for lack of a better term, the ability, like, can you see or sense if there's ghosts around people? Anything along those lines, or
Yes,
some kind of
and like
sensation?
yes, so seeing people's like spirit guides, angels, whatever you want to call them. Uh, y- yeah, I'm like little Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense. I see dead people all the time. It's like just a never-ending phenomenon. And I've tried to learn how to turn it off from many different people, many different backgrounds, many different religions, and it just has never worked for me. I do not know why. Because other people are like, oh, I could just turn it off. Well, that's
Yeah.
cool, but I have not had that luxury thus far. And
Wow.
part of the psychic gallery I do, I don't, you do not come to that, uh, but the psychic gallery was very interesting. It was the first time that I've ever done one this last conference, and I, I really, it was just one of the most moving experiences that I've ever had because I always make people cry whenever I'm doing readings and things like that, or like when I'm doing private psychic readings with people. I always make them cry. But together, like it being a group, when it's just one on one, it feels like one on one right after the other. When I'm doing it at events, I have like 30, 40 people come throughout the day where I just make them all cry separately, back to back to back to back.
Wow.
But when it was a whole group of them, it felt more cathartic. It was all of us releasing that baggage and just healing together. And it was really cool to see everyone be so open to it. Because there are some people who come in specifically with the mindset of, I'm going to prove this, these things are fake, right? And then you turn them into, I love turning them into believers. There were two particular people on that psychic panel who came in and were just like, none of this is real. Had that attitude about everything the whole day. And when they left there, they were like, we're going to come back over here. Yep, we see this all the time.
Absolutely.
I really didn't believe in any of this, but this was 100%, and good because those people definitely needed healing, and they got it.
By the way, I'm showcasing just random pictures from some of my past visits around the Mineola, um, the paranormal con at some locations, and I'll feature some more areas here in a moment. But I'm so glad you mentioned that too, about sometimes people thinking this is fake, this is not real, and then they turn around, um, and realize after whatever they just went through, there's absolutely truth to everything. Um, just to give my own very very brief example, I'm in a ghost hunting group that we called Spectre Two, or Spectre, but on the Facebook and other sites we listed as Spectre Two, and every now and then we would do what's called ghost hosts, where for free we would like we wouldn't charge anything. We would go to a location, they would sell tickets, and then it would be like a fundraising for them to be able to have that location gather money. But we would do a ghost investigation at night for those patrons for free, like from us. Like we don't charge anything, but the all the revenue went to the location. And every now and then we would have the same thing. People would come in, they would be absolutely like, uh, "This is totally fake. Like this is absolutely just gibberish, everything, like total skeptics. And by the end of the night, they would absolutely just be astonished at what occurred. We even had one person, I can't remember his name, but he was a youngish guy with his friend, both of them like in the early 20s. And at one point, the device that we had, which was spitting out words, spitted out his name specifically. I'll just make something up like Timothy. And when that happened, the look on his face immediately dropped when he realized it was talking to him directly. What are the odds, right? That the
Yeah,
guy's name is Timothy and it happens to do it right there while it's with him. So interesting stuff. But I'm so glad to hear that you had that happen as well and that some people left as true believers. Great stuff. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Um,
always kind of my goal is just the genuine experience of it all, and no matter what we do, because I host a lot of events like similar, to what you said, and even when I did them in my asylum, the way I start off with everything is first and foremost, provocation is never allowed, regardless of how many results you get from it. It's never okay to go into somebody else's home and just use
yeah.
provocation. If they're angry, they have a right to be. That's their home. You are an intruder in their space. They have every right to be mad. You do not. You do not get to be angry back. You get to be respectful or you get to leave. And the other point I touch on is it, investigating is like fishing. You could sit there for 8, 12 hours in a spot that's usually popping and not get one thing. It's all about patience and never assuming or expecting results. Because when you go into that with those preconceived notions, you can also taint your evidence, what you would call evidence. You can
Hmm.
taint your findings by doing that. And so, like, it's not like you see on TV. There's not going to be something happening every 2, 3 minutes. It's not going to be all scratches and demons and everything's dark. That's not how it is. That's played up for the views. That's what draws people in. That's not a true paranormal experience by any means. And I think people really need to learn
Yes.
the difference between the two because it's dangerous. There are a lot of really like nasty locations that do things just willy nilly, and I'm just glad I don't own a location anymore. That really made me disheartened. I actually took a break from the paranormal for about 2 years after, well, a year and a half after uh, giving up the asylum because it was just too much. You see a whole different side of the paranormal, and if anyone takes anything away from this, it's to be weary of those who give in to the dark so quickly and are so quickly to believe in that.
Yeah.
Because one, you're feeding into that negativity, you're just going to make it worse. But also, most of the time, it's not real. I hate to break it to people, but dark stuff does happen. Do not get me wrong. But when that's all that happens, you know, there's never any profound moments. That's something to be wary of.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I think you mentioned a little bit of that too on the panel, where when it comes to provocation, absolutely you're correct. That's a no-no. It's almost like for lack of a better term, the Zach Baggins effect of trying to
Yeah, we
rile
did.
folks
We
up.
did touch on that. Yes. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, we do not believe in that in our group as well. We're there to be respectful to the ghosts. We're there to try to get evidence. We know that it's a struggle for them sometimes to appear and talk, sometimes even just make noises, anything like that. But we absolutely never ever provoke them. So I'm so glad to hear you mention that as well, which
and not
is,
even provocation. It's the expectation as well. People are like, "Oh, well, touch this." It's not even in like a negative sense. But people are like, "Touch this, make this go off. Can you do this? Can you do that?" And it's like you're expecting them to perform like circus animals. They're not animals. They're humans, and even animals shouldn't be treated that way. It's kind of wild. And I don't care what anybody says. How mad they get. TikTok ruined actual investigations and like everything that we have done as a whole, as a, what you would technically consider a field, right, of researchers, if you think about it in that sense. It's all
yep.
been set back because everything is so sensationalized that you, I know that you've seen, I don't TikTok a lot, but people will send me things. And they're like, oh, is this real? And I'm like, are you kidding me? The AI aspect of it all, too, now, and just
Oh yeah.
oh my god, it
Right.
drives me absolutely insane. And it set us so far back because instead of all coming together, and I told you guys about this, the database, you know, if we all sat there, if every single location kept a database of just the basic logs, like how I showed you guys, you could scientifically almost quantify certain instances happening, right? It's controlled environments essentially. If you're doing it, if you're compared comparing the same days, um, months, seasons, different things like that, and by taking the baseline readings of everything in its scientific nature, we could have we could have been leaps and bounds farther than we are now. But everybody
Yeah.
just wants to make money. Everyone wants to make money off the amount of teams that charge people to do home investigations, and one usually just make everything worse, and two not actually be able to do anything about it. They're just getting the money and then putting their struggles on their YouTube channels and their TikToks for people to watch.
Yeah.
Like it, I'm truly disgusted. Honestly, that's why I like just doing the conferences and things now, where it's a different mindset of people that are coming to these things for the most part. And if people do come in with that mindset, then we usually change their minds.
100% agreed. You touched upon something else I had written down as well, the Hollywood effect, where everything is truly, well, lots, not everything, but lots of things now are truly about money. And again, I think it ties into the world of, for lack, for better or worse, the world of ghost adventures, where they popularized the idea of going to locations and then spending then things overnight. And then whenever that occurred, areas that were like derelicts that you couldn't even give away for free, now it can be $200 a night, or it could be more, something along those lines.
Uh,
I
First
know
of
of
all, if
a,
you have ever find a place aside from where I owned that charges only $200 a night, let me know because this is wild. We've
oh
been
yeah,
trying to investigate somewhere for a while, and it's just myself and one other person as my teammate. And we usually like go with other people, but we haven't even solidified anything yet because anything that's like remotely close is $600-700 for a night, and not even like for
hmm,
a full night. And uh,
it's
uh
crazy, right? Uh,
yeah,
I was
You
about
let
to
me
say,
know, homie, because
I do know if you want to know one place that truly has an overnight stay, and my fans have seen me there so many times. I praise it left and right, and it's super cheap. It's the Pioneer Village in Gonzales, Texas. It's only $25 per person, and you can stay the whole night. The whole place is
how
yours.
far is it from um Mineola? Because or
Oh, yeah,
from
it's
McKinney? How
super.
far is it from that area? Because I live about 2 hours away from Mineola.
Let me see.
I'm gonna have
Just
to
a
Google
quick
it.
Google
McKinney
search.
to
I
Gonzales.
like to use Bing on mine. You're looking at about 4 hours 45 minutes, with light
That's not bad for
traffic, is what
Texas.
it says.
That really is not bad for
Yeah,
Texas. Usually it's about 6 hours, and that's just
but
to
yeah,
get
I know of other locations.
2 hours.
Oh yeah, like anything in Texas, west to east, and so on. It's funny because people move. Obviously, so many people move here to Texas, and for them, they get shocked by the distances involved. Sometimes it's
It's
more
a
than
whole
6 hours to
continent.
get to places, and you're still yeah,
You can
the whole
drive
continent. You're
like
right.
you can drive 15 hours one way and still be in Texas, and then you can drive 20 hours another way and still be in
Yeah,
Texas.
so true. But yeah, you're right about locations. I've started my own ghost hunts like early 2018, somewhere around there, and I've seen the multiplier effect when it comes to dollars. Locations that were reasonable now are very unreasonable, and some locations are outright outlandish. Like when it comes to what they're asking for, I'm like, how?
Mhm.
How am I going to spend $750 for a night at a location there, like in San Antonio, for example? That's crazy. And obviously,
And
it says like it can be up to 8 people, but how can you find 8 friends that are all be
they
on the
can
same night?
all travel. Yeah, that's one thing. And it's again for the time frames that they give are absolutely insane. They're like you can only check in at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., but then you have to be out by seven
Yeah,
or eight. And so you're not even getting a whole 24 hours for what you're paying. And then there have been sometimes we go and they're like, oh, this other team's still here. Or like the owner just wasn't there and like showed up. Like it was
yeah,
weird. It was weird. I've very seldomly gone to places that are like actually owned by other people. You know, a lot of the places we do are like actual businesses that we've been invited into that are haunted, and they don't really let any other people go in there. But when I do events there and stuff, like um things like that, I've been to other places that were owned and like publicly known to other people for or publicly available to other people three
yeah.
times. And every single time, basically, almost every single time, it left like the worst taste in my mouth. But then it made me undersell, well, not undersell, but I really lowballed myself for what I was doing at the asylum because I really wasn't making enough money for it. Like, I made just enough to pay the rent on that place and to like get it cleaned out on like the north wing side. And that north wing side took almost 2 years to freaking clean out in itself. This place had a north wing, a middle wing, and a south wing. Like it was huge, and no one ever volunteered unless it was for free or they could get something out of it. You know, it's kind of
Yeah,
just a sad sack of
that's
taters is
bad.
what it is. Because you can be so passionate about something, but isn't it true in everything that people will always ruin it for you when you get too close? You know, so you gotta
Agreed.
step outside and look at the big picture of
Uh,
it all.
and then you were mentioning a minute ago that you had to leave for a couple of years. Is it because just your experiences there at that location? Was it something where you needed to take a break, something along those lines?
Um, no, it was the people. It was the living people. Um, I I constantly would get it to where people would book, right? And so what I did was you had, and for very like crazy reasonable prices, I'll send it to you so you can actually see. But it's like um, you get private investigations, right? And it's you and a bunch of people. I don't charge by the person, I just charge for the increments that you're there 24 hours, 48 hours, so on and so forth. And it's already very cheap. When you host an event and you're charging people to ghost hunt with you have to pay something, a different pricing package, right? And then you also have to have insurance and waivers signed.
Mm,
You are
yes.
acting as an event party in my location. You have to have waivers as a company essentially because I do. When I have events, everyone signs my waivers for my LLC. It's not that hard. If you want to be responsible for these people, be responsible for them. So they would not only book for the private investigation and like know that there was a price like a difference. I would tell them beforehand. They would rent it out purposely as private investigations, like I guess thinking like I wouldn't figure it out or wouldn't know. And I would always run the names of the groups or whomever was booking through Google, and Google will tell on you real quick if you're selling tickets or something. And I see that they're selling tickets, and they're selling them for like hundreds of dollars to be in this
No
place,
way.
and then putting me as a special guest there. You like using my
Oh,
name as well on top of it, and then
oh my
making
goodness.
I making
Wow.
a it's like probably around one group, the highest group that they were charging $250 a night because they rented out for 2 nights for like $200 during a special I was running.
Yeah.
They booked it for like $200. They were charging $250 per ticket
Per
and were
person.
selling like 15 spots and sold all of them. And then they didn't show up. Okay, the people who paid the money for the event showed up and they ghosted everybody. These people
No pun
never got their
intended.
money back. I yeah, right. I never got my other half of the booking because you pay half up front, half after you're done. Most people just pay up front, but they were like, "Oh, we'll pay half and half later." I should have known then it was sketchy. I should have known by who they were it was sketchy, honestly. But I was like, I'm gonna try not to be so closed-minded about what I've heard about these people and see what my experiences with them are. I always
Yeah.
try to do that, regardless of. I will take that into consideration, if you're a shady person. But how do we? How do I interact with you? And then, of course, that
And then
happens.
it happens.
But it happens
Oh
all the
no.
time, all of the time. And then it was almost 3 hours for me to Broken Bow from where I live. So every weekend, every Friday, I was driving out, and every Sunday, I was driving back. I have a 5-year-old autistic kid. He's 5 now, but it was a lot physically, mentally, and emotionally to continue pouring my soul into a place that it wasn't good for me or my family. Because at this
Yeah.
point, I'm barely paying the rent. People are taking advantage of the pricing left and right. And I also gave away a lot of nights because this was like during COVID and everything, where everyone was like having even more health issues than normal, and you know, stuff was just going on. So everyone was having fundraisers for things. So I was like, here's, you know, 2 free nights at the asylum and 2 free nights
Yes.
for every fundraiser and doing multiple of them. Almost half, one year, almost half of my bookings were all donated.
I'm so sorry that happened. No, that's totally
And I was
understandable
like,
why you had to take a break.
but then when I needed help, when I would try and do fundraisers and things like that for it, because my booking fees are nowhere near enough, no one ever wanted to do anything. No one ever paid attention. And then when I said, oh, I can't keep up with it anymore, everyone was like, oh my God, how can we help? Then everybody had solutions. Why don't you do a GoFundMe? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I'm like, you don't think I've done all of those things? And at no point did any of you step in and say, hey, yes, let's get together and let's do this. I think that was my biggest letdown, was thinking
Yeah.
that there was such a huge community that truly cared. But once they couldn't get anything from you anymore, you were of no use to them. So why would they put in that effort except to judge and be like, oh, well, we tried, right? But did you really try? And
Yeah.
then to not really hear from any of those people ever since I stopped owning that place. It's been a very eye opening experience. The one I'm always a giver, and I've always been aware that when you can't, people can't get anything out of you anymore, they'll stop showing up. But I really thought this tribe was different. I thought this was, I thought it was more pure than what it was, and that's just how I
It's
feel
interesting,
about it now.
and thank you for sharing that. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that about what happened, the reselling of tickets, and so on. Because have you ever heard of a location called Fort Concho in San Angelo, Texas, by any chance?
Is that the one that they also do the haunted house in?
Mm, I'm not sure. They definitely have a themed event around Halloween, but it's like
I
a giant fort mission area, but it's barracks and housings from the original time period. It's really,
I
really large.
think so. I'm fairly certain I know which one you're talking about.
It's a beautiful place. It's one of the other locations I would recommend going to where you can still book it overnight relatively cheapish, but there's a twist. And it got me thinking why that twist occurred. Previously, you could book it overnight and it was no problems. It was like 125 up to 175. And then you think you could have like up to 4 people. But now, if they suspect that you're a ghost hunting group or anyone involving the world of ghost hunting, then they require you to have insurance, like you mentioned a minute ago, right? And
Uh huh.
it got me thinking, when did this happen? Like, why? This was maybe around a year or two ago that had started, and it sounded like from just me looking up information and talking to some of the people there, very loose information, it sounded like that's what was happening. Whomever was doing something, they were booking the night, but then they were selling tickets to that location, and that would cause what should have been 4 people or so to have a lot more people and become a liability. That's the only thing I could think of. I thought of that just out of thin air when I was looking up the information on the insurance and the wording of the insurance and so on. I was like, this could only happen if there's a large number of people involved, but it's not. It's just
Well,
going to be 4 of us. Like, why? And
here's the thing.
why? Yeah.
Everyone should. Every single location, and this is what part of what blew my mind. So you have a standard term contract for investigating with me at my event, and particularly when I own the asylum. You have rules that you agree to, basically no provocation, um, and tidy up after yourself. That was basically it. Those were like my standard rules. Be respectful, right? But I also had a liability and insurance waiver that everyone had to sign. You are a business. You are not only operating outside of normal operating standard operating hours, which your business license is telling you, like is basically built for, right? A lot of these places are open during the day or supposed to be tourism classification, business
Yep.
wise,
Yep.
right? A lot of these cities that they're operating within all have regulations about businesses operating past a certain time. So they're all operating outside of business standards for the city. So they're operating illegally in that aspect. But then they're also not having people sign liability waivers when they go into these places. Do you know that if somebody just like a crazy famous haunted place, right? They don't make them sign waivers. A place that's been on TV a billion years, which is like basically all of them at this point. We all know the very famous ones, right? None
Yeah.
of them make them sign waivers. If somebody falls down your steps while they're not only there outside of standard business operating hours, they're also there without them signing any type of liability. You are responsible for that person. If that person dies on your property because of an accident or exposure to something and they have like a crazy reaction to it and that person dies, like somebody has a peanut allergy and like this people storing peanuts in the kitchen and this person has a reaction, like that can happen and they die on your property, you're liable for it. As a business owner,
Oh yeah.
first and foremost, that is the most irresponsible thing to be doing. And then you give them the option of running amok because they have no rules, they have no standards to be in not only your home essentially, but the home of these spirits that you're subjecting them to. No one cares about the ghosts. No one cares about those spirits. Let's be really honest about that. In the broad spectrum of things, no one really cares when they're owning a business. It's all about what can we get out of you guys, not how can we help you. Every weekend after investigations, I would cleanse and recharge the building, cleanse the
Yes.
energy from just the people who were investigating, and recharge the building for them. Always leave them treats, all of their favorite snacks and goodies, whatever they would ask for. No matter where I go, I always bring presents for them. I always bring presents. You call them offerings, whatever you want. I always bring something for the spirits we're visiting
Very good.
because they get left out. And it makes me so sad. It just, oh man, this bummed me out way harder than I thought it would, honestly. I haven't talked about this stuff in a while. And I'm just, man.
Um,
It's
I guess just a few more minutes then. Um, one
okay.
question
I'm not
I
going to have like a full breakdown.
no worries, no worries. um, one question I like to ask for all of my interviewees in the world of ghosts and spirits, or two, it's a two-parter. The first part is, what is the best evidence you have ever seen in the world of ghosts and spirits? Maybe it could be felt or heard or something.
um, so I think, so the asylum during haunt season would always be, well, I call it haunt season. During October would always be a haunted house. So that's actually how it got its name. It used to originally be a nursing home, a halfway home, a bunch of different things. But it wasn't named the Brokenville Asylum until these three gentlemen decided to buy it and build a haunted house, like use it just during October for a haunted house. Well, I ended up getting it because it was actually haunted, and they didn't want to be in there anymore.
I
Like
have.
they had all had experiences. Two of them like just would not go into the building. It was one of the funniest things I'd ever occurred, like just that had ever occurred in my life. Always say nothing happens for no reason. Everything happens for a reason, you know. And it was named the Asylum, and they still would run it for the first year that I worked with them. I basically just the rest of the year would run tours for them before I became the full time owner. And during that last haunt season they had there were two different instances. So there was a girl who like did not believe in any of this stuff, was drunk when she came in during the tour. It was just basically like a walkthrough tour that I would do right outside, like right before or the days that the haunted house wasn't operating. And she came in with a group of her friends and was so drunk, and she was sitting inside of one of the cabinets, just acting up. And it got like real quiet, and I just knew it was about to happen there's an older lady at the asylum who loves to grab people by their ankles and drag them, and she'll
What?
bite you too.
Did
Okay,
you say she'll
and
bite
before
you?
I could get yes,
Oh,
and
wow.
I've had multiple people walk out of there with like a hand mark and a bite mark right in the same place. This place would give you the best physical evidence. Best physical evidence. You got touched all the time. You could hear people having conversations right next to you. You don't have to be like I am to experience. I think that was the most beautiful part about it. You didn't have to be like me to experience so so deeply. It was such a deep and profound experience with these energies there. And I knew it was about to happen because usually, as soon as I told the story, she would grab someone and bite them. And so, without the power of persuasion, because this person is very drunk, right? So, I could, if I had told this story previously, chalk to that to her just, being like freaking out, being like, oh, it happened to me. She was sitting in the same cabinet that 2 years previous, the same thing had happened to one of the hot workers. She was sitting in there and she said she felt someone yank her leg out and you saw the door open and her leg slide out. And she said it felt like somebody just bit down on her. And she got up and she ran out. She peed on herself because she got so scared. And
Wow.
sure enough, we walked out into the daylight because it was very boarded up to try and keep out all of the intruders. It was a very old building. And clear as day, two hand marks and a bite mark right in the middle. Like she gnawed on her. She was bleeding. She broke skin. But 2 years previous to that, a girl who worked in the haunt, her job was to sit in that particular cabinet, and when people walked by, grab their ankles and startle them a little bit. She was sitting in there, and while she was waiting for the next group to come through, same thing happened to her. She said she felt someone grab her leg, pull her out, and she was like got pulled halfway out of this drawer, and it's a pretty big, like long, old serving, wooden serving uh, block, like for food, like an old buffet service type thing. And she got pulled halfway out of it and got bit, and she never
Wow.
went back. But she came up one day when all of the old haunt workers were like, "So what are you doing in here?" And I took them on a tour, and I kid you not, like not even 10, 15 minutes into it, four of them left. And we're just like, nope. Because clear as day, you could just hear people talking to each other, and they're like, what was that? I'm like, the ghost. Place is haunted. You guys know it's haunted. Like, nope. And they would go. And
Wow.
the getting kicked in the back. So I don't always get attacked. I don't use provocation. I make bad people feel uncomfortable. If you understand what I'm talking about, you've met me, right? Like you've been in my presence and you see the way that I present myself as a
Yes.
woman and a dark woman who goes into a lot of places where all the ghosts are a lot older and more racist. They do not like me because of the way that I present myself, because I don't back down. And it's not provocation. I'm asking questions that they do not like. And for the justice of the people who are still having to deal with these very oppressive and negative ghosts, I am a voice for them. And they do not take kindly to that. So at Goatman's Bridge, particularly, which is wild. So if ever there were a tulpa, that would be one. Whatever's at Goatman's Bridge is a freaking tulpa. Because that thing is nothing but all of the negativity and hate and satanic and evil thoughts that have gone into that place purposefully of feeding that lore. They have created something incredibly evil there. I
You're talking
got
about the
scratched in the
infamous
middle of my
Boatman's
neck
Bridge? Right?
in Denton, Texas. I went there to prove the Ghost Adventures guys wrong, and I kind of, I kind of proved, I kind of proved them wrong. It's not a demon. It is indeed just pure energy that was fed over decades and decades and decades and decades and decades of people going there for the specific want of seeing and summoning demonic energy. And they have fed it with sigils and rites and investigations that call it such and
Yeah.
give it all of this power. And it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Everything was reading 666 at night. Everything. Like, if mocking were an Olympic sport, this thing would win. And then it left three scratches, three very distinct scratches down my neck.
Oh wow.
And then I ended up in the emergency room um, for about 5, 6 days because I was so severely dehydrated. And even the doctors were like, "We don't know what it is you're puking up." It was, I kid you not, it was like a sci-fi movie. It was like this black goo, and it wasn't bile. It, they tested it. They could not figure out what the substance was. I could not hold anything down. Water, food, nothing. All that came out of me for almost 2 weeks before the 5 days I was in the hospital. Because I'm the type of person, I'm just like, I'll just keep going, I'm fine. It was this black bile,
Ew.
buckets and buckets full of it. My body
Wow.
latched on, took in all of that energy. I'm an empath. I take in energy, and until I learned how to also flush myself of it, I realized that's what it was. I took it all in and didn't push any of it out when it interacted with me. It was literally just my soul was like purging itself.
So
It
that
was
place is for
wild.
real.
Even my husband was like, "This is some like demon shit," and I was like, "Don't say that," because oh, sorry, I forgot I can't curse. I'm so sorry, but that's what he said.
Oh,
But yeah, it was an experience for sure.
that
Yeah,
actually, you kind of answered my second question. What was your scariest experience? And that sounds like it already. Is that right?
no, that was not my scariest.
Oh,
Um,
what would be the scariest one
the
then?
scariest one, I think, the scariest one had to be whatever tried to start channeling me at the actually in the back of that shop where we were for the conference. It used to be an old funeral home, and again, racist spirits do not like me. Like that, that town was not very well known for being kind to colored folk, and this thing was something. Again, it was kind of like an energy that had just been put into this place over the years. Something that has accumulated in that town because it used to be called Sodom and Gomorrah. Mineola did. Did you know that?
That location, that shop we were in the background.
No, just that city in general used to be called Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
Yes, and it used to have a very dark history, and a lot of dark things have happened there. And so I think this was just like an accumulation of all of those things. And when we started investigating at these locations, we started just kind of like manifesting it in places back and forth between the theater and the annex and the funeral home, and it would just like kind of jump with us and follow us. And it was a conference, it was a paranormal conference, 2022 or 2023. It was the first year we did it in Mineola. And something started channeling me, and Jeff Hurley and Mark Robertson were lead in that group with me. And Jeff has a Celtic cross made of, I can't remember what type of crystal that he carries on him. And when I start like trying to battle and combat things, I start getting hot. I start burning up. And Danny was there, Danny too. Um, I You can physically like feel the heat coming off of me. You can be sitting two chairs and a chair away from me and feel the heat coming off of me. And they were trying to ground me and trying to get this thing off of me. Because I don't remember why, but I know at hindsight I should not have
Wow.
gone into that investigation at all. Because I was like sick and just not in a good place mentally. You should always, never push yourself in that aspect. But I didn't think it would get as bad as it did. I thought it would just be like a fun, lighthearted group expecting. I was not expecting what happened that night. And Jeff is sitting on one side of me, and Mark is sitting on one side of me, and Danny is standing behind me and like grounding me. And I kept rocking back and forth because I could feel the hatred of this thing just like starting to fully flow through me. And I told Jeff before he even started, because I could feel it, I could feel his intention. I said, "Don't you start praying." And he told me later that he, like, the same time that I like said it, he had started praying in his head and doing the
Hmm.
Lord's Prayer. And after that whole thing, and I get it to stop, and we clear me, Jeff opens up his hand, and the cross was like burned into his hand
Oh,
because I was running so hot. They had actually burned it into his hand.
oh my goodness.
And that
Wow.
scared me because of what happens to me also affects the people who protect me. You know, we're a team and we would all take a bullet for each other. You know, we would all take on that hurt for one another. But it's the fact that I can also, and I'm not just the only one who gets the impact from what happens. I'm not the only one that suffers blowback sometimes. Those people who are protecting me also get hurt too. And that's what's scary. I don't want anyone else to get hurt.
And what was the location again? The one that this
It was the
happened at?
back of the um curiosity shop. It was right on the other side of that wall where we were having that conversation. That used to be
Wow.
one big open space, right where the bathrooms were and the vendors on that other side. That's where it
Yeah.
happened.
Wow.
That used to all just be one open room. So technically in that room.
That's
And it's funny
crazy.
because they always put
Because
me
I was
back
walking
there
through
to
that
be.
location like nothing, and to hear something.
Hmm.
Oh, really? Wow.
We cleansed it,
What a
so
difference time makes as well.
yeah, we
Like
we got rid of it,
like
and so it's like a completely different place now. It really is. It really is. I used to never want to go back there alone because I was just like, this thing could just like happen to me any second, and then by the time anyone notices, like it's too late.
yeah.
But now I'm okay with being back there.
Yeah, the people there
Clearly,
at the conference, at the locations, Mineola, Texas, Tyler, they're all wonderful. I've met so many wonderful people there. What a difference
they
time makes, right,
truly are.
between now and in the past, like you were saying, with certain ghosts and how they felt towards people back then. It's a big difference now, so it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that group of people, they truly are because we talked about how there was a lot of that false hope and thinking that it was a community, and it's just whenever they can't get anything from you anymore, then mo- they have nothing to do with you, and that's not the instance for this group of people. All of Lone Wolf Paranormal, George Jones, we had Danny, got Mark, got Cammy and Pat, rest his soul. Um, you have Alexis, and we have Rebecca and Chris and Alan and Amy, and I know that I'm like forgetting a billion more people, and Susie. It really is just a whole different family. Larry. It's like a family. It's not even like you're part of a community anymore. It really is just family
That's awesome.
out there.
Awesome stuff.
And everyone
Like,
leaves feeling like family. We see so many returning faces. A lot of our crowd is just people who came once and just decided to never leave us. And I absolutely love it. I love getting to share so many different years worth of experiences with these people.
awesome. I guess that's it. Any other last words? Anything else you would like to mention to the peeps out there on my channel, Ashley? That would be great for them to
Um,
hear from you.
just keep up with what this guy is doing. If ever there was times that we need people who are about oneness and about us coming together instead of it just being about me, me, me. Follow this guy. Do the events he does. Giving back to these locations is crucial. Making sure that you guys are doing your homework before you go into these places as well, where it goes back to and what it goes back to. Um, we also have a bunch of events coming up We have Tyler Comic Con coming up on November 22nd and 23rd of this year at the Cascades Country Club. Check, a lot of our paranormal conference peeps are usually out there helping and volunteering, doing different things. We'll be out there emceeing and paneling, and I will have both of my shows running out there, Storming the Unknown podcast and All Things Animated with Ashley Storm. And you guys can find all of my information on Facebook or Instagram. I have a YouTube channel for Profoundly Paranormal, and any event bookings can go through any of my social media, really, and I'll get in touch with you that way. And I really appreciate you having me on. I
Oh,
truly, truly
you're very
appreciate it.
welcome, Ashley. I'll get those links too, and then I'll put them in the title slash description of this video when I post it, so that way anyone that wanted to go and see your information, they can easily do so there too. But thank you, thank you, thank you, much appreciated. Thank you for coming by and having this wonderful interview today with me.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, bye everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.